This is the Expanding Boundaries podcast.
Do you feel trapped? Stuck in a world of mediocrity, constrained by bad habits, limiting beliefs, and feeling unfulfilled? Do you feel that deep down you know you were destined for much more? In Expanding Boundaries, you'll discover how you can break free and step into your real life, a life without limits. And now, here's your host, Michael McLeish.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Expanding Boundaries podcast. I have an exciting guest today, Adam Maggio, and I've been wanting to bring him on here for several weeks, and he's graciously accepted the invitation this time around. Adam, thank you, and welcome to the show.
Pretty much welcome you. Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, I'm going to dive into just a brief background here, and I think later on we'll go in and fill in some blanks. But Adam here, he started his professional career at age 21 and signing on with one of the largest Fortune 500 supplemental insurance companies in the United States. And just after 3 years, he quickly rose to the top of the field with over 68,000 reps and placed, was it number 8? Is that right?
Number 8, correct.
Number 8. That's amazing. All right. So then after that, what year did you start actually? What year was that?
2001.
2001. So 6 years later, then you were upgraded in the business and took on the challenge. You were a district manager in that position. And then within 9 months, you were rookie manager of the year and then promoted to a regional sales coordinator. So again, very good success from the very beginning, it sounds like, with that company.
For sure. It wasn't easy, but.
Yeah, of course. I mean, there's a lot of work behind that for sure. So then in 2009, just 2 years later, you were number 2 in the country of over 20,000 managers. Very impressive. And again, you were at the company 13 years and you stayed in that position. And it says here you were most notably known for your ability to recruit straight commission sales reps, and you personally enrolled over $5 million in benefit premiums. Is that right?
Correct.
Well done, sir. Okay, that's exciting. There's a wealth of information behind all those details from where you started to what got you there. And before we get into that, I do want to ask you, where are you located right now?
Actually, right now I'm in Delray Beach, Florida, but I'm originally from New Jersey.
From New Jersey originally. Okay.
Yeah.
Have you lived all over the country, or is that the 2 locations you've stuck with?
No, I lived for most of my life in New Jersey. Unfortunately enough, I was able to retire at 34 years old. So I have spent, a lot of time, going around and kind of just visiting places for 2 to 3 months at a time, California, Phoenix, so forth and so on. So, but my main location is New Jersey.
Okay. But you hinted at this the other day when we spoke that you like to house hop, right? You live in one place for a period of time and go somewhere else. What's that about?
Yeah, it's been interesting. When the COVID pandemic hit, I was living in New Jersey, in a town called Hoboken, and it was right across from New York City, if you're not familiar with it. And it was, kind of like the city life. And at that point, it got really crazy up there because it was so close to the central, location of it all. So at that point, I said, you know what? I work remote. I said, why don't I just go and travel? And what I've been doing for basically the last about 2.5 years, is literally going and living, 3 to 6 months, what you would call like an Airbnb, getting an opportunity just to be in a different place in a different time zone, living in houses that you normally wouldn't, necessarily buy, just seeing very unique things. And it certainly helped a ton with creativity, with goal setting, with motivation, and all the things that I think that anybody that's listening to this podcast would want to be successful at. And it just gives you a little bit of a different perspective.
So how many places have you been in since you started this?
Oh, geez. Off the top of my head, I've probably been in about 6 to 8. Ironically, one real cool story. I actually stayed in Muhammad Ali's house. I stayed in Muhammad Ali's house for almost about 8 months. Yeah. The original prayer room was still there, and kids showed up one day. So wow. It was pretty wild.
That is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Has it been different than you expected? Like, did you think you liked a certain style of home and found that you're now migrating to a completely different thing, or is it about what you expected?
It's about what I expected. I think one of the things that when people, and if anyone listening ever has the opportunity, because you do have work remote to do this, I think you should do it, because you're typically, when you're looking at, an Airbnb rental that you're going to be in for a month to 3 or even 6 months, you're going to pick something you're not normally, like, what you wouldn't necessarily buy, everything from like a log cabin, to, 9,000 square feet Muhammad Ali's house, the things like that. So I think it's nice, because now when I do finally plant my, permanent residency, let's just call it that, I've kind of like taken a little things from everything, and I know much more about what I would want.
Okay, that's cool. That's kind of what I was hoping you'd say is you're really, through all the experimentation and being thrown things that you wouldn't even invite in. It's just part of the package. You're discovering things that you really do like that are maybe non-negotiable in the future once you find the thing that you want.
Absolutely.
That's cool. I do like to ask this, if you could go anywhere in the world for 60 days, where would you go?
Ooh, great question. If I could go anywhere in the world for 60 days, where would I go right now? I would probably say I'd go back. I love Amsterdam. I've had an opportunity throughout the whole becoming an entrepreneur and sales process. I've pretty much won every vacation every quarter. So I've been to every continent, basically on an awards trip. But I would say Amsterdam's probably one of my favorite places. It's very unique. The culture is a little bit different. It'd be up there with Italy, though. Italy might win at this point. I'm getting a little bit older.
For sure. What's the top 3 bucket things that you would have to do there?
If I was going to go to Italy, I would would be all about the visiting, some of the better restaurants that are a little bit less well known. It's quite an experience to have, in a restaurant where it's the original, grandmother cooking the Italian food and things like that. I like being by the shore a lot as well. I think being near water gives you clarity. If you have an opportunity, even just to get to a lake or get to a beach, sometimes the best ideas come from that.
That's really good. All right. So besides your usual clothing and toiletries, what's something that you would never leave home without when you're traveling?
Oh, my laptop for sure.
A laptop.
Yeah, your laptop. My laptop comes with me everywhere I go. I literally don't leave my house without it. It's just, you never know when you never know.
That's right. Yep. But I mean, with that laptop, you're connected to the entire planet. You can do anything you want from that. That's powerful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And it's changed the way we operate business wise as well.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, 20 years ago, they weighed a little bit more than they do these days.
Yeah,
as well.
For sure.
And you got like about an hour of battery power to get done what you have to do and wait for dial-up to happen, right? So it's amazing what technology we have now. Okay, well, I want to revisit your background here. Can you rewind us and maybe take us back to, I don't know, where you grew up and how did you, what was your formative years like?
Yeah, absolutely. I grew up in a little town called Fort Good River, New Jersey. I was your typical very small town. At that time, there was no Walmarts or anything like that. I grew up to a great set of parents. They did end up getting divorced. We see that a lot now. They were school teachers. My whole family was full of school teachers. And in high school, I wasn't, how do I say this? I wasn't, high school was just not for me. I don't know what other way to put it. There was so many things I just didn't understand, like why if I'm not interested in science, why do I need to know about science, And I really, I was an athlete. I wrestled, I played football, but really high school to me was just a drag, quite honestly. I know everyone's kind of got different, opinions on the school systems, especially today. But back then, it was tough. I mean, I barely struggled to graduate. I was in a class of about 280 people. I was about 252. And at that point in my life, I thought there was something wrong with me. It's like, hey, why do I not like this? And, kind of like the people that were going along with the program, that were doing well, it just seemed
that's normal, and you weren't normal.
Yeah. And I found out that to be a gift. When I left high school is really where things started to change. I always knew like I wanted money. You know, as parents being school teachers, money's not really, you know, readily accessible. You know, it was the type of thing where I call it businesses where you have to do what's called time served or seniority. You know, the only way you make more money is by being there longer, not necessarily performance based. So leaving high school, I started doing like, you know, every side hustle you can imagine. In high school, I was actually selling stuff on eBay. It got to the point where, you know, I was making 3-4 grand a week, you know, just selling stuff on eBay.
What kind of
And
stuff?
oh, back then we were selling everything, man. We were selling clothing. We were anything we could find where there was just some. It's not like today where there's all this eBay courses and things like that. It was
Right.
literally like anything you could find as long as you made a couple bucks. But developed a little system, and I'm like making 4 grand a week, and I'm looking at like, okay, what you know, what's you know, like what's out there, right? And I realized quickly the shift came for me where I knew I wanted to hustle, right? I knew I wanted to work hard. And I really didn't understand what that looked like because leaving high school, I started delivering pizzas. And then I noticed like in a 4 hour shift, you know, I could go out there and make what most people would make in a 9 to 5. And I kind of caught on a little bit more there. And I actually became a welder. And I welded and I wasn't like a union welder. I was one of those welders that was basically just tacking railings. And it got to the point where I looked around and I said, okay, but you know, at a young age, you look at financial success as pretty much the main driver. You're not thinking about a lot of other things. But I said,
Right.
well, who's really making money? You know, and I noticed that all the business owners were the ones that were making money. Okay, it wasn't an employee. And I noticed, even from the owner of the pizzeria, you know, there's a guy that's making 5, 6, 700,000 dollars a year, and the guy could barely speak English, right? So what I quickly realized was if I got to the point where I kept trading time for money, right, I will never be able to get ahead because you're going to run out of time, right? You've never heard of anybody that's worked, in my opinion, 2 jobs, right, and gotten ahead. It just doesn't happen that way, right? And I also noticed that if you trade time for money, you're going to run out of time. The only way you can get a raise is you got to go in and ask the boss, right? And then the reality of it is you're only good as what it costs to replace you, right? You know, it's nothing personal, but you know, if you go to job fairs these days and age, I mean, people are willing to do the same job for less, and the
Mm-hmm.
business owners in business to make a profit. So what are they going to do? So the turning point really became that I decided that I needed to run a business. There's only one problem with running a business. Right? Well, one, I think it's like 90 some odd percent go out of business within 3 years. Right. Two, money. Right. I had no money. Like Friday came and that paycheck literally went towards back then, you know, some beer and, you know, whatever it took you to get through the week. And I was depressed. You know, I remember having anxiety and being depressed about it. So I said, what can I do? Right? Like, what can I do to get started? I know that I've got this gift, right? This gift of being able to work hard, and I just have to find a way to do it because I have no money, and the odds of me being successful on the first business are very slim. And what I recommend is what I did. And I kind of fell into it. But what I did is I went to a gentleman I knew and he was selling cars. I said to him, can you get me a job selling cars? And he kind of looked at me like I was crazy. And he said, why would you want to do that? I said, I want to make 100 grand a year. That was my goal. Right. And he said, but yeah, you know, you're going to be on the lot 80 hours a week. He said, you're starting over every time you're selling something. So he said, why don't you get your insurance license? Right. And I think a lot of people underestimate the organizations that are out there that have pre-built systems, right? Pre-built systems with virtually no overhead and virtually no high-end money out of pocket. Where I look at a lot of entrepreneurs that today are successful, a lot of them trace back to the insurance industry because you can get literally a license, right? Takes you about a week. You have $300-400 out of pocket, and then they plug you into a system that's duplicatable, right? So I went and I said to myself, like, okay, wait a minute. This makes sense now. I can go in there and I can work as hard as I want, right? I can work as hard as I want. I can go out and I can sell something, right? That not only do I get paid at the time I sell it, I get paid every time someone pays for the premium every month, right? But I can do it with literally brochures and sweat equity. And that's really where it caught on to me. And I remember it vividly, my first convention that I went to, the first year I didn't do well. Most people, the attrition, in those types of positions, you're looking at about 11% retention, right? One, it's hard to make money your first year. Two, you've got to get used to selling.
Is that
I don't care.
11% retention just from the first year to the second, or is that for all time?
That's pretty much all time. Yeah. About the third year. Usually if someone's at the company by the third year, they're pretty much lifetime.
Yeah.
But the first year, you're going out, you're cold calling, you're knocking on doors. However, those skill sets, if you look at businesses that do very well now, those business owners know how to sell at the end of the day. Because if you know how to sell, you can go create your own economy. You don't have to ask anybody for a paycheck. No boss or anybody's going to go there and kick you out, right? Matter of fact, normally on most organizations, you're going to get higher percentages the more that you do sell. So the first year was not clean. Like it was just me kind of like just being, what's the word I call that? It's basically like just some sort of like ignorance. I was like too dumb to fail. People were like, give me little tasks and I would go do it, And I couldn't catch on to why people weren't making more money. And I went to a convention and I looked around and I remember saying to myself, like, everybody up there in the top 10 is nobody special. I mean, truly nobody special. And that's when it hit. That's when it really hit. It wasn't about me, Matt. It was about me managing my time, right? And for most people, they'll do that with a boss, right? The boss will tell you when you can eat, when you can go on vacation. But yet when they want to go out and take this entrepreneurial journey by themselves, they just, for some reason, can't, control their own time, right? They'll do it for somebody else, but they won't do it for themselves. I doubled down hard. I mean, I doubled down to the point where I'm like, if any of these idiots can do this, right, I'm going to do this in literally half the amount of time. And when you go inside places like that, you're 1099, you have no, it's all on you. What happens is if you work hard, a mentor will seek you out. Right? A mentor will actually seek you out because nobody's going to let the person that's working their tail off, that's the first person in and the last person to leave, they're not going to let them sit there and struggle. They're going to look at them and say, you know what? I have so much stuff going on. Maybe let me start to see what I can do. Right. Because real professionals, when you see somebody like that and they're just, ignorance on fire, right? It is like, wow, this is somebody I can kind of mold. And I had someone step into my life at that point. And
Were you
good.
Sorry to interrupt you, but were you open to that? Were you looking for a mentor, or what was that like when they approached you?
There's a saying, right? When the student's ready, the teacher appears. It wasn't like I was necessarily looking. I study everything. Like I will look at every top producer and I'll reverse engineer things and do that. I wasn't necessarily looking, but it was kind of one of those things where it just came together. And when it came together, it was just like magic. It was magic because in 3 years, right, from day one, the third year, there was 68,000 people doing what I was doing. And I was number 8 and I was 24 years old. Right. Because it's not time served, right? It's not like I have to, earn my dues. It's, I can outproduce somebody in the beginning, even if I don't have as much knowledge as they do, by just getting more reps in, right? Yeah. Because that's all it is. That's really all it is. How effective are you at time management and getting new customers? And I mean, I can go into this story, very heavily, but I mean, it was personal development. It was this mindset shift. And for me, it was this breath of fresh air to realize like, I'm going to be a millionaire. I'm literally going to be a millionaire. Like, I know I can do this now. And that was the first step. That was the first step. Truth be told, those are 70, 80-hour weeks. But when you're 21 to 24 years old, like, what do you really, what else are you going to do? Watch TV? You're going to hang out with the boys at the bar. Now, I had my fun, but I also limited the fun
Yeah.
because I learned that at the time my hourly rate was climbing so quickly, and I encourage anybody listening to this to figure out what your hourly rate is, because when you know that, you can learn to start to delegate activities a lot better.
Can you give an
So
example of
huge.
what does that look like? I mean, how
Uh,
does one know their hourly rate?
So what I typically tell people to do is tell people typically, I don't care whether you're in business or if you're an employee, you know what your hourly rate is. But if you're this kind of quasi intrapreneur or entrepreneur, it's, hey, just divide it into a 40-hour week, right? What do you make a month? Divide it into a 40-hour week. I remember to this day. I mean, I put it right above my computer is what I'm doing right now, a $50 an hour activity. Because if you do the $50 an hour, it works out to roughly like 100 grand, something like that a year. Well, I quickly replace that within 3 years, saying is what I'm doing right now, a $250 an hour activity, right? So to give you an idea of how early I caught on, I literally made maybe my first $10,000 to $12,000, and I immediately hired someone to do paperwork. I mean, I'm talking like a girl in high school could just do paperwork. I think it was like $7 an hour back then, whatever it was, because I knew automatically. First off, I hate paperwork. Most top people do, right? And I could just go out and get one more customer and cover the whole month's salary.
Mm.
So it was like that. You didn't have to explain to me twice. It was just like, I got it. So
Yeah.
that's the delegation process.
Yeah, you took your 24 hours and expanded it by using somebody else's 24 hours to help you accomplish your mission, right?
Absolutely.
So when you going back, you said something clicked. It wasn't about you, but your management of your time, right? And then you doubled down. So was leveraging other people to help you do these things part of the doubling down, or what did that mean for you?
Excellent question. One was having other people help me, because I started to look at it like a math problem. Right? That's all I looked at it like. It was a math problem. I had the same products at the same price in the same markets as 68,000 people. Some people were struggling to make 20 grand a year. Some people were making 2, 3, 4, 500,000 a month. Okay, what was the difference? The difference was them. They looked at it like a business, not like a sales job. And that's what I started to do. So when I say double down, I would take, for example, I believe when you're on a roll, you should continue to work like double the hours, right? So if I'm on a roll, most people get on a roll and they stop and celebrate. They meet for happy hour. They do this. When I'm on a roll, I am going to exhaust myself, right? Because I'm getting a week's worth of productivity out in a string of 12 to 16 hours, right? So that's one thing I would always tell people, and likewise in reverse, right? If you're not on a roll, maybe it's not the day to really burn yourself out, right? Maybe it's time to change. When I got into management, I had one thing happen to me that kind of changed, because everybody's motivated a little bit differently. Like, let's face it, money is a very important motivator. But I had when I started managing, which is a whole segue, I had one gentleman in the office, and this guy was just a surfer, right? All he wanted to do was surf. And I sat there, and I could see like he was effective. I said to him, like, hey, pulled him aside, like, what do you want out of this? Tell me. Like, I required you set one appointment a day in my sales office. So he's like, I just love surfing and blah, blah, blah. I said, all right, here's the deal, man. I said, you come in every morning, 8 o'clock, like everybody else. As soon as you get your appointment for the day, leave, go surf. Every single day by 9, 10 a.m. latest, he had an appointment. Now, keep in mind, most people will take them 8 hours to get an appointment, right? Through cold calling, door knocking, however. He would do it in an hour and a half, 2 hours tops, because he wanted to surf. So I started to learn that people had different primary motivators. And that's when I started scaling a team, right? Because I caught on real quickly. I'm like, well, I'm going out and I'm soliciting businesses. What difference does it make if I have one person hip to hip with me, or if we're making phone calls, if I have someone next to me listening to those phone calls, make them as well? I'm duplicating my time, right? And I'm transferring a skill set. Then it caught on to me very quickly that what would it matter if there was 100 people doing that, right? They're not on payroll. There's no overhead, right? So I started to really get into the gift of recruiting people and taking them out of that employee mindset, converting them in 45 minutes in an interview to see what it looks like to be an entrepreneur. And the people that raised their hands and said, I'm in, you would have, if I could do 8 hours worth of stories, but let me tell you, most of these people, for instance, what you have going on with the ERC program, right? When you start building the team, I mean, you already have a significant sized team, but like the people that ended up raising their hands and saying, I'm willing to learn on straight commission, you're talking doctors, lawyers, you're talking like people you would never imagine. Yes, everybody wants the young, motivated Adam, right? But they're dying, they're few and far between. But professionals that are already out there that are making six figures, they're the ones that want out the most. They're the ones that want out the most. Why? The stress, right? They're a lawyer. They go to court, okay? Or a doctor, the stress of operating on somebody, right? So they look at this and they go, well, I can get out of it by doing that. And that's when it kind of blossomed. I was able to go, okay, let me just put some systems in place. And I always stress systems because if you don't have systems, you're relying on a very high level of talent. Okay. If you have very good systems, you're relying on the ability for someone to play Simon Says with you. That's really all it is. And if you really want to grow an organization and you're relying on talent, you're going to be very slow growing it. If you're relying on systems to grow it, it could skyrocket overnight. And that's what happened. When I was district manager of the year, that wasn't even a year. It was 9 months. It wasn't even a full year. The average district manager had maybe 2 to 5 reps they were working with. I had 41, right?
Wow.
So I looked at this like just a massive thing. And I always, I was told this once is don't operate in the position that you are, operate in the position that you want to be, right? So the takeaway for me there was like, hey, I can grow this thing significantly. And I mean, we've done, I know the bio I kind of, you read off there, it's a little bit outdated, but just to give you an example, like we've done hundreds of millions of dollars in sales. Hundreds of millions of dollars in sales. And anyone listening to this, the one thing I can stress is I am nobody special. I'm nobody special. If you have a chip on your shoulder, right, all you need is you need to enter in an environment. And sometimes it has to be part-time. Sometimes I would work with part-time people. They'd be very upfront with me. I'd be very upfront with them, what our roles and responsibilities are. But if you're in the spot and you're listening to this and you're an employee and you're like, wow, this something just clicked for you on this podcast, get into an environment where you can do something even part-time. Okay. Most people do that just so they can earn extra money to go on a vacation or something like that.
Right.
Do that to learn the skill. The skill who's going to fire you? You can't get fired when you have that skill. It doesn't matter whether it's insurance. I think what you have going on right now with the ERC program, I mean, that is the most lucrative thing. I mean, insurance commissions are generally very small. Like that thing you have going on is amazing. So I think it's just, if I just had to sum it up, it's like, what do you want out of life? Do you want to listen to an employer? They always say, well, there's job safety and there's security. No, there's not. The average person switches careers every 4 years right now, right? Like most people,
not like it used to be.
Not like it used to be at all. In corporate America, I was, when I was younger in the business, I was making 200 grand recruiting people like from Wall Street, making $800,000 a year, right? And you'd say, well, how can you do that, Adam? It was simple. They saw the how genuine I was, right? But you don't realize the stress that some of these organizations put on people to the point where they physically start to get affected. And then let's face it, this day and age, it's a lot more about, family. I truly believe that people want to work and be with their family. And doing this or getting inside some type of organization like this allows you to do both. Because again, it's not based on time, it's based on output, right? It's based on, are you effective? And I'll tell you right now, most people are effective for 2 hours a day. They're 2 hours a day. They will spend 2 hours a day actually getting stuff done.
Is that true for you still, or is there a way to bend that and make more time that's effective for an individual?
It's true for me still. I'd be lying if I said no. What I've learned to do though is I've learned to do. So let me just segue. Personal development for me from day one helped me with this. Okay, I was the guy that literally bought the CD sets and listened to them 500 times. When I was driving a car, little 3-cylinder Toyota. So the truth is, yes, there's days where I'm not effective. I'm only effective for 2 hours. What I've learned to do though is I've learned batch time. So, for example, one of my mentors, Ed Milet, talks about this all the time. Great friend of mine at this point. And ironically, I met him through the insurance business. But long story short, I break it up. I break my days up like he talks. He talks about many days, right? So instead of time to me is almost, it's like, who made this up? There's 24 hours in a day, right? But it just like, who made that up? So what I'll do is I'll break it up. I'll have 3 sections of my day where I'll take a break. I'll do a 10-minute workout. I'll, plan a little bit. Those are like my non-money hours. And then I'll go right back into 2 to 3 hours of money hours, right? So people ask like, well, what are money hours? Well, talking to new clients, prospecting to new clients, getting referrals from existing clients. I mean, these are really the only 2 things that move the needle, right? Everything else you can outsource or pay, or the customer service side of it, that's all stuff you can outsource. So those are the only really 2 things.
That's amazing. So just to capture those 2, it was talking to new clients that come in and recruiting for new ones. Did I catch that right?
Yeah, talking to existing clients, prospecting for new clients, right? So if I'm prospecting for new clients, that's obviously the highest level activity anybody can do, right? But there's also talking to existing clients. People very much neglect that because they are in this for the short term, not for the long term. Your existing clients are the best source of referrals and additional sales.
Right.
Right. And then attending events, attending events is very underrated. Where else can you go that local motivated people hang out, right? They hang out at chambers of commerce. They hang out at networking events, mixers, conventions. Those are very high value use of your time. Now more than ever, because of the internet and the way people act on the internet, meaning like you see a lot of people that flash a lot of things, but you kind of have to weed through a lot of those now. Now more than ever, the relationships that you have with people are going to be what really moves that needle. So I believe in developing strong, lifelong relationships. I always use a terminology. Say if I wouldn't let them in my house, I'm not going to let them in my head, right? Meaning I'm not going to occupy time with them.
Yeah, that's so good. Man, Adam, we could dive into a billion different topics from what you've just shared with us. Yeah, I think that's huge. If you could go back though in time and go back to maybe your 18, 20-year-old self and start this whole thing all over again, what would be the most meaningful advice that you'd give them right now?
One is if school's not for you, there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you at all. 2 is success is not reserved for special people. Most people that are successful, in my opinion, have a chip on their shoulder, generally came from not to use the word dysfunctional, but a lot of people came from not so great pasts, They just didn't know how to take this talent and drive it. 3 would be get serious quick, get serious quick. What I mean by that is it took me a while, because I was still young and, you're hanging out at the clubs and you're doing all this stuff, once you start making money, you start spending a lot of money, right? I think it's the average millionaire goes 3 times, bankrupt 3 times. And when I started making money, I mean, you got to remember, I had literally no expense. 300 grand a year with no expense was crazy. So I would go out and buy the bottles and do all that. And I would say start saving immediately, because if you do that, you can build a business out of this little sales thing you took on. And that's what the difference between someone being stuck in sales for the rest of their life or becoming a real entrepreneur and building a business out of it.
Yeah, because I can see how it would be really easy to see money's coming in this month. Oh, it's gone. I got to make more, and you just keep your head down and stay in that loop without taking a step back, looking big picture. What can I build on top of build with the income that I have for a longer term plan? I think that's really good advice for anybody that's in that position.
Yeah, absolutely.
For everybody listening, I'm guessing most people here haven't built, companies with or been involved in companies and done hundreds of millions of dollars of sales. What's one simple action or tip that they could implement in their lives that would most expand their boundaries today?
As far as getting into like an entrepreneurial position?
Yeah, or maybe just a shift towards that direction. Maybe they're already entrepreneurs, but it could be just some kind of shift from what we've discussed today.
So a couple things. One, absolutely personal development. I think people either don't do it because they feel like it's like some weird thing. Personal development is what's not taught in school, right? And now, I mean, back then we had it was like $250 for like a 6 CD set. You have YouTube. Okay. My off time, literally when I clock out at the end of the day, we'll call it that, clock out, but like I'm on YouTube. I'm literally learning new things. So I would say just forget, you're going to have to give up your old you to become your new you. Okay. That person's dead. So you have to dedicate any time you can to learning. I firmly believe that you have to learn the skill set of sales. You absolutely have to if you're ever going to be a successful entrepreneur, because if not, you're going to be at the mercy of salespeople, right? And you don't want to do that. But if you learn sales, yes. For me, insurance, I fell into it. It wasn't about insurance; it was about winning, right? You can do that with insurance. You can do this with solar. You can do this with the ERC program that you have going on. You can do this with, virtually anything. But you have to have the guts. You have to have the guts, and you have to change your mindset from we're told no from birth, right? No, you can't do this. No, you can't do that. Your parents slap you on the wrist. No, 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 right? So no has this negative thing in our head. In reality, you have to understand, and you get into sales, no is the common thing. It's like when someone goes up to bat and you're in a Major League Baseball, they're going up to bat, and the whole crowd screaming and they're clapping, because this guy bats 300, right? Well, it means 7 out of 10 times they don't even touch the ball. So you have to get into that mindset. For the most part, I'm just going to fail, but then I'm going to have this small win. And then when you have that small win, that's how you gain confidence, right? That's how you gain confidence. And that's why you'll see people that are way less talented than you, have nowhere near the amount of money you may have right now, that are out there and can run circles around you, okay? Because they're just sticking to a system, and they've had that moment where they just said, you know what, enough's enough. I know where I'm at right now, but I know I'm not going to stay here forever. And choose a path that you can get into where if you have to put in 2 hours a day, you just do it. If you can make a switch full time, I actually recommend doing it. You have 90 to 180 days worth of income. You can switch full time. You make that leap. It's scary. But let me tell you something. You'll look back in a year or 2 or 3 and you won't even realize the person you've been, as long as you've done everything. So listening to podcasts like this, duplicatable systems, having the guts to say, you know what, if he can do it, I can do it. I hate to say it that way, but it is what it is,
For sure. I really love the what you said earlier, again, is just, you don't have to be somebody special to have special results.
Yeah.
And I think that's a trap that we all get ourselves into as well. So, well, good stuff, Adam. How can our guests find you or connect with you?
I would say the best way, you just want to connect with me, just go to my Instagram. I pretty much do a lot of business through Instagram, but it's Adam Maggio Inc. So at Adam Maggio, Maggio is MAGGIOINC. Just let me know, just follow me there, shoot me a quick message, say, hey, heard about you on the podcast. Be happy just to connect with you, see what you got going on. And, I put a lot of content out there too. So.
Okay, perfect. I'll make sure that we have your IG account linked in the show notes as well, if somebody's looking for you.
Beautiful.
Well, Adam, thank you so much for your time today. This was, we might have to do this one again because we could probably pull 3 more episodes out of some of the things we've discussed here. Thank you for being here and sharing your experience and your knowledge with our listeners today.
Anytime. I appreciate it. And thank you for having me on. It's an honor.
Likewise. Thank you. And for those of you listening, just think about, again, one big takeaway. There was a lot of golden nuggets out there. And go back, listen to this podcast again, maybe rewind a certain section. If there's something that resonated with you that you can take and run with and take some action, do that today. Take that action, big or small, take that first step in expanding your boundaries. And the last thing I'll say, just as a little bit of a shameless plug here, since Adam mentioned it a few times, I am involved with helping businesses with ERC, and you can too. If you want to be involved, if you want to learn more, you can shoot me an email. It's mike@myercsource.com, or just find me on social media at Michael McLeish Official. You'll find me there on Facebook or Instagram. I'd be happy to connect you with more details on that and see if you want to participate. So that's it for today's show. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.